There's no better way to start day one of Black History Month than with the original QB1 and the first black quarterback to make the Hall of Fame, Mr. Warren Moon. But let's go backwards. After winning the state title and being named All-City at Alexander Hamilton High School in LA, California, Mr. Moon got a scholarship offer from Arizona State, but after they recruited 2 other white quarterbacks who I promise you've never heard of, they wanted him to switch positions from being a quarterback. Rightfully, Mr. Moon refused, instead choosing to go the JUCO route, setting every single record at his JUCO at quarterback until he got his scholarship to the University of Washington. Even when he was at Washington, there were fans so disgusted at the sight of a black quarterback, they were calling the athletic department to get him kicked off the team and booing him at games. Mind you, he led them to a Pac-8 title and won in the Rose Bowl. So surely after all this winning he's done, surely he'll get drafted by the NFL, right? Nope. So instead, Mr. Moon took a trip up north to play for the Edmonton Eskimos and won not 1, not 2, not 3, but 5 Grey Cups in 6 seasons, collecting 2 MVPs and a 5,000-yard season along the way. So finally, after winning on 3 goddamn levels in 2 countries, the NFL had no choice but to let QB1 in, and he made them pay for every single year, signing a then record $6 million contract. Okay, now we're all caught up. So after the NFL made him waste 6 years of his prime dominating an entirely different league in a whole different country, he went on to play 17 seasons, throw for just under 50,000 yards, 291 touchdowns, including a 25 touchdown Pro Bowl season at 41 years old in the damn 90s, pre-player safety rules era obviously. And fun fact, he was the first black quarterback to play for a black head coach. Shout out to Dennis Green. So to the original Iron Man and the original QB1, I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them. Gather around the campfire, kids. I got a history lesson for you. Let me introduce you to the first black quarterback to start a season opener in the modern era, the first black quarterback to start in and win a playoff game, the first black quarterback to play in the Pro Bowl and win Pro Bowl MVP, Mr. James Shaq Harris, the pride of Grambling State and the protege of legendary coach Eddie Robinson Sr., rest in peace. Mr. Shaq Harris was drafted to the Buffalo Bills in 1969 in the 8th round. Yes, there were that many rounds back then. And surprise, surprise, he fell so far in the draft because pro scouts told him he couldn't play quarterback back in the day. But after a few years of turmoil in Buffalo, he found himself on the Los Angeles Rams for a magical 1974 season. He led LA to a 7-2 record as a starter, made the playoffs and beat the Washington then Redskins in the first round, and made the Pro Bowl. And then in
1979,
he hung up the cleats for good, leaving behind a blaze trail for everyone you will hear me talking about this month and many others. And for that, Mr. James Shaq Harris, I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them.
1993, African-American quarterback named Charlie Ward. He won the Heisman Trophy. Where did he go after that? The New York Knicks, because they didn't draft black quarterbacks back then.
Yep. You heard him correctly. Charlie Ward, the winner of the 1993 Heisman, did not play a single snap in the NFL, but instead played 12 years in the NBA. The only Heisman winner ever to do that, by the way. As a 2-sport athlete at Florida State, Mr. Charlie Ward gave new meaning to we have to be twice as good to get half as much. After leading the Seminoles to the national championship on the gridiron and the Elite Eight on the court in the same damn year, he headed to the NFL draft where surely he will be embraced with open arms, right? I mean, for God's sake, some teams had a draft comp to Joe Montana. Nope. We never got a chance to see what could have been, but we will always appreciate what was. And for that, Mr. Charlie Ward, I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them. With the Super Bowl being a week away, it's only right we celebrate the first black quarterback to ever win one and Super Bowl MVP. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Doug Williams. But I'm never one to reduce his career to just one game. I mean, this man went from carrying his own poop bucket to an outhouse because he didn't have indoor plumbing to not only carrying the Lombardi Trophy, but the hopes of Chocolate City and the dreams of young black quarterbacks everywhere to hope to follow in his footsteps. Born in Zachary, Louisiana, he went to Grambling State, learning under the tutelage of Eddie Robinson Sr. again, rest in peace to an absolute legend. He was then drafted to the laughingstock of the league, the creamsicle Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the league learned quickly that there was nothing funny about Mr. Williams' game, as him and his cannon arm led them to their first winning record in just his second season, and their first conference championship, the last time the Bucs would do that until 1999. Next question is, wait, How could that happen if they had Mr. Doug Williams? It's because they didn't. 3 years later, when it came time to actually pay him, Bucs ownership, because they didn't want the face of their franchise to be a black man, responded with disrespectful lowball offers and leaked critiques and fake stories to the media. For example, while other quarterbacks were celebrated and lauded for having massive arm strength, Mr. Doug Williams got critiqued by fans and media alike for, quote, throwing the ball too hard, unquote. After lengthy and unproductive negotiations, they parted way for melanin-related reasons, and the Grambling gun was left without a roster spot for 4 years, even having a quick stint with the USFL on the Arizona and Oklahoma Outlaws. Until we get to the part of the story y'all are familiar with. One fateful day, gets a call from the Washington Redskins head coach, Joe Gibbs, to join the roster as a backup. That lasted for about 1 year, where Mr. Williams was locked in and ready to make history. After a magical run to Super Bowl 22, he came face to face with the Denver Broncos and some guy named John Elway? I don't know, apparently he was pretty decent. But Mr. Williams came out firing, putting up a then Super Bowl record 340 passing yards and tying the passing touchdown record with 4, on the way to a 42-10 curb stomping, as he became the first black quarterback to not only start in the Super Bowl but to win it and become Super Bowl MVP. And for being a history maker and glass ceiling shatterer, I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them. I will not allow y'all to rewrite history. Before we get to the obvious, we will not forget the on-field assassin that was Colin Kaepernick, the actual person that led the Niners to their first Super Bowl appearance in almost 20 years in his first year as a starter. There's all this talk about, wow, Jim Harbaugh was such a winner in the NFL. Look at how he even went to a Super Bowl, completely leaving out the part where Cap stepped on the scene and immediately raised the ceiling of the Niners. Then came the playoff run, and dear God, how fitting, because it starts with Cap taking on Aaron Rodgers and the Packers and putting up a NFL QB record 181 rushing yards in his first playoff game ever. That still stands over a decade later. There are people in the city of Green Bay, Wisconsin that wake up in a cold sweat to this very day remembering what Colin Kaepernick did to them that day and the following year. That year ends with the aforementioned trip to the Super Bowl, putting up 364 total yard performance and coming within 3 points of winning it all. Okay, now for the moment that took Colin Kaepernick from star athlete to world-shifting icon. August 26, 2016, Colin Kaepernick quietly and peacefully sat for the anthem like he had been doing the past 2 games completely unnoticed, until this picture by Jennifer Lee Chan was taken and the media storm began. After the game, surrounded by media, Cap answered why he chose not to stand for the anthem.
I mean, ultimately, it's to bring awareness and make people realize what's really going on in this country. There are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust, people aren't being held accountable for, and that's something that needs to change. That's something that, this country stands for: freedom, liberty, justice for all. And it's not happening for all right now.
The whole interview was 18 minutes, but I only have but so much time here. Go watch it yourself. After meeting with then teammate and former Green Beret Nate Boyer, Colin decided to change his sit to a kneel to still pay respect to the troops while continuing his protest, which is the part the media leaves out, so I will say it again. After meeting with then teammate and former Green Beret Nate Boyer, Colin decided to change his sit to a kneel to still pay respect to the troops while continuing his protest. And here we are, almost 8 years later, and you know what? Moving on. This began the most important moment in the modern era of sports. Colin has forever changed how every network had to discuss sports, made the world drop the facade that politics and sports aren't deeply entrenched within one another. Even the NFL had to take legitimate strides towards supporting social justice initiatives. Colin Kaepernick undeniably changed the world. Unfortunately, it cost him his career. His lifelong dream was taken from him as a direct result of his protest. Don't believe anyone that says it was for football reasons, because as we discussed earlier, and with all the bums we watch every damn Sunday, we know that's not true, which is why the NFL had to settle out of court with him and Eric Reed after they filed a collusion lawsuit against the NFL. Colin's journey since then has been a fruitful one that includes Netflix deals, Disney deals, and most importantly, the Know Your Rights camp, whose mission is to, quote, advance the liberation and well-being of Black and brown communities through education, self-empowerment, mass mobilization, and creation of new systems that elevate the new generation of change leaders. So to this very day, Colin Kaepernick is still making strides for a better tomorrow. One day, our grandchildren will ask us about the Kaepernick era, and a lot of you will lie and pretend you were on the right side of history, much like the past generation did with Dr. Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, John Carlos, Tommy Smith, etc., etc. As for me, I'll be able to honestly say I gave him his flowers while he could still smell them. It is incredible how short our memories are. A damn shame how we lose perspective so quickly. Y'all know how Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl? You know who the second one was?
Mr. Unlimited.
Russell Wilson on the Seattle Seahawks was that guy. There are few things in recent history that were sights finer than Russell Wilson making oncoming defenders look like the Washington Generals, followed by a moonball that falls from the heavens right into the hands of a receiver. If you had prime Russ, pencil your team in for a 10-win season and a trip to the playoffs, you can book it. 9-time Pro Bowler, Walter Payton Man of the Year, 3rd among active players in passing touchdowns. The man was so good he threw interceptions for touchdowns. Y'all will respect the name that is Russell Wilson, and I will give him his flowers while he can still smell them. Every once in a while, we engage in revisionist history. We only remember players for their worst moments or narratives, but that's where I come in. In the 90-year history of the Philadelphia Eagles, who's the quarterback that leads them all time? And let me save us some time. It's Donovan McNabb. He leads them in everything. Passing touchdowns, passing yards, wins, you name it. 6-time Pro Bowler, 4 straight NFC championships, one of only 8 black quarterbacks to play in the Super Bowl, and he moved more cans of chunky soup than Griselda moved bricks. For that, Mr. McNabb, I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them. The best college football player to ever live. I said what I said, debate your mama. Auburn was 8-5 when Cam got there. 1 year, 1 Heisman, and 1 national championship. Later, he leaves and they're 8-5 again. He takes the leap to the league, first overall. What does he do game 1? Throw for over 400 yards, fresh off campus. And then he did it again the next week, on his way to winning Rookie of the Year. And then came the MVP season. And if you were too busy hating to enjoy this season, I pity you. I genuinely feel bad for you. Look at that kid's face. He has the right idea. 45 total touchdowns, just under 4,500 yards, 15-1 record, and a trip to the Super Bowl. And before you type your little hate comment, just remember he's an MVP and a Heisman winner, and you can't even get promoted at your job. All-time leader in quarterback rushing touchdowns with 75. There are multiple Hall of Fame running backs that don't even have that many. To football Superman, and to one of the most exciting players we have ever seen, I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them. The football world was not prepared in the slightest for this man to enter the league. Mr. Randall Cunningham was the prototype 1.0 for the dual threat quarterback. He ran a 4.4 40, had an absolute bazooka for a right arm, and he could punt. The only thing they could call him was the ultimate weapon, and how fitting. He averaged 6.5 yards a carry for his career, retired as the all-time leading rusher for quarterback, and the league didn't even have the read option yet. This is simply off of scrambling and design rollouts. Oh, but you know the stereotype. What happens when the running quarterback gets older? What happens when his athleticism fades? No big deal. Mr. Cunningham will just be part of the highest scoring offense at that point in NFL history, and if not for the 2 most inexplainable missed kicks we've ever seen, he would have been the second black quarterback to make it to a Super Bowl. And fun fact, he's a pastor now in Las Vegas. Praise God. For being the blueprint for all the other black dual threat quarterbacks who come behind you, I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them. Has any other quarterback ever stepped into their first full season as a starter and immediately became the best player in football? We have never seen this X-Men mutant level of talent mixed with equally as incredible PlayStation level productivity and success. MVP, 50 touchdowns, and 5,000 yards in his first season. Speaking of which, a black quarterback has thrown for 5,000 yards 3 times in NFL history. Patrick Mahomes is 2 of them, ending that season in the AFC Championship, which is the floor of Patrick Mahomes' career. 6 seasons, 6 conference championship games, 4 Super Bowl appearances, 2 rings, and by the time some of you hear this, he probably just won his 3rd. And if you're not a Chiefs fan, you can spend your time hating him for reasons outside of him kicking your team's ass, but he's not even 30 yet, and his face is already firmly chiseled into quarterback Mount Rushmore, and he's only going up from here. So you're gonna be hating for a pretty long time. As for me, I'm gonna give him his flowers while he can still smell them. We need a separate wing in the Hall of Fame for guys like Teddy Bridgewater. The OG Hall of Fame, National Treasure Hall of Fame, I don't know, we'll workshop the name later. Liberty City's own Teddy Bridgewater is among the most universally beloved players in NFL history. Drafted in the first round to the Vikings, the future looked bright for the two-glove Teddy, going 11-5 and making a Pro Bowl in just his second season, until one unfortunate day at training camp put a pause on what could have been a great follow-up year. But here's where Teddy's black history. See, the black journeyman quarterback is a relatively new thing. Teddy is one of the first few, getting signed to the Saints, Panthers, Broncos, Dolphins, and the Jets for like 2 seconds, ending his 9-year career last year with the Lions, mentoring young players and quarterbacks along the way at every stop. And he's going to continue to do so in his post-career. Already starting taking rookie Hendon Hooker under his wing, and he'll be the head coach at his alma mater, Miami Northwestern High School, this fall. And for that, I'm going to give him his flowers while he can still smell them. I like to call Jacoby Brissett Mr. Steady Hand. When you put in good brother Jacoby, it's usually after some chaos and you know exactly what you're getting. A steady hand. Your quarterback suspended for some deflated footballs? Put in Mr. Steady Hand. Your quarterback retire right before the season start? Put in Mr. Steady Hand. Your quarterback gets suspended for having some not so steady hands? Put in Mr. Steady Hands. And he's gonna make sure we don't go out sad out there. And we appreciate black journeyman quarterbacks here, especially when they're the first black quarterback to start for my favorite team. So for that, I want to give him his flowers while he can still smell them.
The folks you said had written you off maybe, what do you say to them?
Yeah, they wrote me off. I ain't right back though. That's the problem. I ain't right back. Let's go.
I had no better intro than a quote from the man himself. First, I think we forgot how cold Geno was at West Virginia. All those Tavon Austin mixtapes we love so much, that was Geno making those throws, leading him to get drafted to the New York Jets in the middle of a dumpster fire, even by Jet standards, including him losing his starting job by getting his jaw broken. Geno looked destined for the journeyman life, most notably making a stop at the New York Giants, becoming the first black starting quarterback in team history. And ownership was so mad about it, they fired the coaching staff the following week. True story, look it up. But eventually he gets the chance to start the season opener for the Seahawks, leading to the aforementioned
I ain't right back though.
and a full career revival, ending with a trip to the playoffs that year. It is one thing to get another opportunity. It's a whole nother thing to take full advantage and not only rise from the ashes, but to rise higher than you even were before. And for that, I gotta give Geno his flowers while he can still smell them. The GOAT of all journeyman quarterbacks, Josh Johnson has played for an NFL record 14 teams. He even played in the UFL and XFL. I would list every single team, but we ain't got time for all that. Yeah, Mahomes, Warren Moon, Doug Williams, and other star QBs, that's cool, but this is what Mr. James Shaq Harris, go watch my video on him, dreamed of. Going from only one black quarterback being in football to a black quarterback being in such demand that damn near half the league cut him a check, some of them multiple times, for having a resume longer than Bible scriptures and all the frequent flyer miles the world has to offer. I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them.
Let's go. That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W. How many people want to eat a W tonight?
First ballot, good vibes, Hall of Famer, famous Jameis Winston. But before he was eating W's in the NFL, he was at Florida State, where he was the first redshirt freshman to win a Heisman and a national championship in the same season. But that's not the season y'all are here for. In 2019, Jameis Winston became the second black quarterback to throw for 5,000 yards in the infamous 30 for 30 season. 32 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, and 100% electricity. And nothing describes the Jameis Winston experience better. Every time he hits the field, all bets are off. You never know what's gonna happen, but it's guaranteed to be magic. 10 out of 10 football watching experience, and we wouldn't have it any other way. For that, I gotta give Jameis his flowers while he can still smell them. There was, and low-key still is, a belief in the NFL that black players were not smart enough to play the ultimate thinking man's position, quarterback. Well, I'll see your thinking man and raise you a literal rocket scientist. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Josh Dobbs. Graduated from the University of Tennessee, getting a degree in aerospace engineering with a 4.0 GPA. And during his draft process, they said he was too smart because God forbid the goalposts remained stagnant. But that big brain came in handy this season against the Atlanta Falcons. Just a mere 5 days after signing with the Vikings, the starting quarterback gets knocked out the game in the first quarter, thrusting Josh Dobbs into the game with teammates he didn't even share a group chat with yet, and proceeds plays to lead them through a 31-28 victory, including an 11-play, 75-yard game-winning drive, cementing his place in the NFL history and bestowing upon him the greatest nickname in league history. So for sending all their stereotypes to the moon, I have to give the Pastronaut his flowers while he can still smell them. Tyrod Taylor has a career record of 28-28-1. I saw that and immediately thought, yeah, that sounds about right. And if you're a fan of one of the 6 teams in the past 13 years that have been lucky enough to have Tyrod as a quarterback, you probably thought the same thing. Tyrod T-Mobile Taylor comes onto the field and the floor of your team instantaneously elevates. Just ask Giants fans how much better their offense looked last year when Tyrod came in for their injured $160 million quarterback. He's one-man instant competence. Even better, ask Buffalo Bills fans who ended their 17-year-long playoff drought. You guessed it, T2. If you ask Chargers and Browns fans, Tyrod's the dream bridge quarterback because his bridges lead to actually good quarterbacks. Even if one of them pushed him off that bridge prematurely, but still, Tyrod is that guy and beloved by many franchises across the league, so I gotta give him his flowers while he can still smell them. Y'all weren't outside. Y'all were not outside for RG3's phenomenal rookie year, where he brought hope to DMV sports fans on a level that still has not been duplicated. Don't believe me? Maybe you'll listen to him.
I'm not exaggerating when I say this. You made me fall back in love with football again.
My earliest football memories are my father complaining about the Redskins being terrible week after week after week until the micro-braided Heisman winner from Baylor showed up and the magic began immediately. A fan base where despair and pessimism once existed game by game, week by week, was replaced with a feeling of euphoria. The energy shift across the DMV was literally palpable. The season ended with 10 wins for Washington, a Rookie of the Year trophy for RG3, and an NFC East title for just the second time in my lifetime. In the spirit of positivity, I will not bring up anything that happened after that, but instead, I will give him his flowers while he can still smell them. Imagine if Derrick Henry could also throw 80-yard dimes. Well, luckily, you don't have to. Say hello to Mr. Daunte Culpepper. 6'4", 260 pounds in the early 2000s, he might as well have been an alien. Honestly, this whole video could just be deep bombs, but I'll be doing him and y'all a disservice. This is a man who went from being born in a prison to setting an NFL record 5,123 total yards paired with 41 total touchdowns plus one iconic celebration. And oh buddy, we were robbed of a Randy Moss Daunte Culpepper 10-year tandem. Robbed, I tell you. After that record-breaking season, the Vikings traded Randy Moss, followed by one of the worst knee injuries we had ever seen. From that point on, Mr. Culpepper spent a couple years on a journeyman route, eventually landed in Detroit where he would throw deep bombs to another Hall of Fame wide receiver. The run was short, but his peak at the time was the highest among any quarterback in NFL history. And for that, I gotta give him his flowers while he can still smell them. First ballot born too early Hall of Famer Mr. Kordell Stewart. He wasn't just a dual threat quarterback, he was a quadruple threat quarterback. He takes snaps at quarterback, running back, wide receiver. He even got special teams player of the week at punter. Could you imagine him in today's NFL? See, in 1995, NFL teams wouldn't take him in the first round unless he permanently changed positions from quarterback. They couldn't see the vision back then. But today, if he was on the 49ers, he'd be Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and Brock Purdy all in one person. Oh, but he's not just flashy highlights and cool nicknames. In 1997, he became the first quarterback to ever throw for 20 touchdowns and run for another 10. Had the longest rush by a quarterback ever, and that record stood for almost 2 decades. Led the Steelers to multiple double-digit win seasons, made a Pro Bowl, played in the Super Bowl, and Steelers fans are gonna watch this and pretend they weren't pelting him with racial slurs and questioning his sexuality the moment his play started to slip, damaging rumors that still cost him to this day, by the way. But I recognize him as one of the most unique players the NFL has ever seen, and for being far too ahead of his time, I want to give him his flowers while he can still smell them. DC native and Marshall legend Mr. Byron Leftwich. We have to start with him at Marshall. Having to go to the hospital with a broken leg in the first quarter, came back to the game and had to be carried down the field between plays, leading to this iconic shot and a first-round draft pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he went on to play almost a decade in the league. But here's the real fun part. Became an offensive coordinator so good that this Tom guy trusted him with all the play calling for a Super Bowl season. Apparently he's pretty good, I don't know. And goddamn it, he should be on someone's coaching staff right now. Should have been the Jaguars head coach, but got passed over for literally the worst head coach in NFL history. But his time shall come. And in the meantime, in between time, I'm gonna give him his flowers while he can still smell them. Mr. Vince Young, or VY, was so damn cold at Texas. VY became the first college player to throw for 3,000 yards and run for another 1,000, with a win in the Rose Bowl versus Michigan and a BCS championship versus Reggie Bush's USC Trojan in a game commonly called the greatest game ever played. After his run at Texas, he was touted as the next step in quarterback evolution. And if you look at today's NFL, they were right. But he had the unfortunate luck of getting drafted to a coach with zero foresight, even worse quarterback development skills. Yet and still, Mr. Vince Young was able to give Rookie of the Year, featuring a 21-point comeback versus the Giants, followed by beating Peyton Manning the next week and breaking the rookie rushing record. But a couple injuries, coaching disputes, and off-field things that are much better told by him than me, VY's career came to an end. Today, you can find him in his hometown of Houston, mentoring young players the same way another iconic black quarterback once did for him. For that, and for being an icon himself, I want to give him his flowers while he can still smell them. The face of the Dallas Cowboys has been a black man for almost a decade. I will say that again. The face of America's team, owned by this guy, is a black man. Why don't we make a bigger deal about this? All this shit about his playoff failures. You know who else couldn't win playoff games for the Cowboys? Literally everyone since Bill Clinton was in office. And you know what he does do? Win a lot of games. Third most since he entered the league, behind these two guys that I heard were pretty damn good. Just 8 years into his career, he already has the second most passing touchdowns in Cowboys history, third in passing yards. There's a strong chance by this time next year he got at least one of them, and oh boy, I hope to the good Lord above the guy he sent into retirement has to call the game. For going from a 4th round draft pick to the face of the most valuable team in sports, and a lot of things in his personal life that I'm gonna leave out because we don't do trauma here, I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them. Remember last year when they tried to convince us that CJ Stroud was dumb? After that ridiculous S2 test, not only did CJ hit us with this iconic bar,
I'm not a test taker, so I play football.
We later found out he's a damn supercomputer. He didn't just have a good season by rookie standards. He had a great season by all standards. He led the league in passing yards per game and touchdown to interception ratio, joining Joe Montana and Tom Brady as the only quarterbacks ever to do so, on his way to winning Rookie of the Year, and led a Texans team to a division title and a playoff win after having only 3 wins the year before. All the man does is throw dimes and praise Jesus, and not necessarily in that order. What's not to love about him? If this is how his career is starting, I cannot wait to see what the next decade has in store for him. But first, I want to give him his flowers while he can still smell them. Y'all don't deserve Lamar Jackson, and you know exactly who y'all is. If you watch him make plays like this and think anything other than, man, that was awesome, you are part of the y'all. The Lamar Jackson experience has been incredible for many reasons, first of which, he's been a phenom on every level he's ever played. First, he went viral as a high schooler on Vine. Vine is older than some of you watching this video. Won a Heisman in college, which, let's face it, might as well be called the Best Quarterback Award. Yet and still, after winning the aforementioned Best Quarterback Award, he had to deal with this absolutely shameful combine press conference, where he handled it with a level of grace and humility that was way more than anyone in that room deserved. To the point where the man didn't even feel comfortable running his 40. And now we had the draft day where we have this infamous visual of Lamar and his mama waiting until the last pick of the draft because teams saw this and decided, nah, I'm good, including my Patriots twice, ought to scar me until my last days, until Ozzie Newsome and the Ravens decided to be the only team with some common sense and trade up to go get him. And Lamar got to it immediately. The moment he got to start as a rookie, he took the Ravens from 4-5 with the whole coaching staff on the chopping block to 10-6 in a trip to the playoff. How does he follow that up, you ask? Just becoming the youngest person to win the MVP ever. Then a couple years later, he becomes the youngest person to win 2 MVPs. And now he's the only Heisman winner to win multiple MVPs. He wins 75% of his games. Every season he finishes guaranteed double-digit wins. He's tied for the second most games with a perfect passer rating with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. So not only is he pretty damn good at quarterbacking, he also has a skill that both of them told him to his face they could only dream of. All that, and he's not even 30 yet. I must say, that's not too bad for a running back, now is it? I gotta give Lamar his flowers while he can still smell them. It's so hard to put into words how important Michael Vick is for people who weren't there, because this is so much deeper than football. This is a culmination of decades of doors being knocked down across all sports, from Jackie Robinson to the Fab Five to Randall Cunningham. Now at the most important and front-facing position in all of sports, dropped off in the perfect city at the perfect time. This was a man that had an entire culture on his shoulders every single time he stepped on the field. I would say based on his play style, he was born too early, but that wouldn't do him justice. There was no Michael Vick before Michael Vick. And if not for Michael Vick, there's a whole generation of black quarterbacks that wouldn't have their idol. There was literally a commercial where the whole premise of it was you too can be Michael Vick. If QBs before Vick were trailblazers, then he came in and set the entire forest ablaze. It wasn't just that he had braids. It wasn't just the way he never felt the need to code switch or the way he ran. It was all of it. Michael Vick represented something to a generation of black people that Marvel couldn't even create a hero to replicate it. Until one unfortunate day, they took our hero's cape away for 2 years. But then he returned, and he didn't need a cape anymore, because he had wings. Coming back to the Eagles after getting his first start in 4 years, our hero was back and better than ever. Winning Comeback Player of the Year, putting up career highs in passing yards and total touchdowns in separate seasons. A story of ascension turned into one of redemption. Atoning for his mistakes in more ways than one, joining the Humane Society to advocate for animals, and even trying to push bills in Congress. Speaking at schools, prisons, and not for the sake of people that are committed to hating him anyways, because it is the right thing to do. And for that, I have to give him his flowers while he can still smell them. For Black Quarterback History Month, I focused on giving flowers while they can still smell them, but I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge some that have gone on to glory. Fritz Pollard, George Taliaferro, Charles Choo Choo Brackens, Willie Thrower, Joe Gillum, J.J. Jones, Marlon Briscoe, Steve McNair, Tavares Jackson, and Dwayne Haskins. Even in the next life, they all still deserve their flowers. It was once said that those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So after looking through the history of the black QB, we can celebrate the progress we made while also acknowledging the work that still has to be done. Racist hate mail is turned to comments and tweets, and not smart enough turned to he's not quarterbacky enough. But the NFL had 14 black starting quarterbacks in 2023, which was unthinkable when Mr. Harris was deterred and Mr. Moon was denied. Black QBs are in the Hall of Fame, winning Super Bowls and MVPs. So to the future black quarterbacks, let these trailblazers add to the fuel to your self-esteem to follow your dreams. Because today the ceiling and the floor are as high as can be. You could be a journeyman, a rocket man, and even Superman. So one last thank you to the legends of the present and past. To the future legends, you can do it too. And I can't wait to give you your flowers while you can still smell them.